Let me just load up YouTube here.
I've decided to leave the mics on for the intro just to see how it goes, because I keep forgetting to turn them back on when we switch over.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, I just heard, yeah, no worries, come off YouTube.
Excellent. Really wish I could sort out the reverb in this room, but I just have to think, 2-3 months my office will be ready, and his video is only 3 minutes long, yes, but we can. The other day it took us 2 hours to go through a 5-minute video, so
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to the Fresh Air Sci-Fi Show. I'm Joe.
And I'm Dave. And I'm definitely here this time.
So I do apologise to everyone for the last minute change. Our guest has come down and is feeling rather poorly, so we did change our topic last minute. Henry, if you are watching, and I don't know why you'd be watching when you're feeling rough, but I hope you do feel better soon, and I have booked you in for next Thursday, so hopefully we can do the ethics and AI next week. But yes, last minute it was a bit of a crap, what we're going to do. And Dave thankfully pulled something out of his arse and found a video for us to review. I've not actually had a chance to view it other than to take the title and create the image, so that's as far as I've done. So it's going to be a first time watch for me as well. Luke, that's a shame that your computer isn't working. We were hoping that you were going to be able to join us tonight, but I assume from the fact that you weren't here that you weren't going to be joining us. You did say that your computer is probably not working. Although, just for future reference, you can get Discord on your phone and use it on there. I know it's not as good quality, but then with the quality that we sometimes have, does it really matter? I don't know. So yeah, Dave, this guy's video, what drew you to doing this particular one?
Typing criticism of atheism into the YouTube search bar.
Number one on the list. There we go.
That was it. It just said criticism of atheism and proving the validity of Islam. How did atheism begin? And I thought, okay, that sounds like it'll either be really good or really bad. And unfortunately, it was the latter.
Excellent. Well, there's more to talk about when something's bad, isn't there?
Yeah, that's it. There's lots of information we can give on top of what he says, and his actual critiques aren't particularly good. So it's a nice, easy evening of critiquing a terrible video.
Awesome. Well, everybody get your questions ready. I assume with this one we'll stop it when there's anything major we need to cover off, or do you just want to watch the video and lay into it at the end?
We're probably better off pausing it as we go along.
Cool. All right. So I'm just going to put things in Be Right Back, and I will get it up so we can get it on.
You might want to put the subtitles on too, because he's quite softly spoken and got quite a thick accent.
Good shout. Leon's here as well. And Roger, hey, how you doing? See, Leon, you're probably glad. Oh, our screens have gone a bit weird, haven't they? You're probably glad that we're not actually doing ethics and AI. I know you're not a big fan of ethical conversations, so this might be a bit of a nice surprise for you to not be discussing that sort of thing. Although I do think you might have liked to meet Henry. He's one of my favourite weebs.
Well, one of my choices was going to be a discussion on human causation, like David Hume and his ideas on causation, because I remember Leon talking about it. But then I thought I would have to do a bunch of reading straight after the studies and all that. So, but we should do one, because Leon enjoyed the conversation, yeah.
Yeah, now there's lots of topics I want to cover off. I mean, I've been also researching a little bit more into theories of truth and getting quite lost in them. And some of them, I'm reading them and going, this is not telling me anything. What the fuck? And it's like, is that me not understanding them, or is it just because they're really useless as theories of truth? So I am going to have a little chat with you about this before I finish off what I'm doing, just to make sure it's not me misunderstanding, which it probably is, if I'm honest. I'm probably missing.
It was the semantic theory.
Oh no, so that one made sense. It was just difficult.
Oh.
No, so it's the deflationary theories of truth, which just basically seem to be, well, we're not really describing truth. That is my one line sort of summary of all of them. We're not really describing truth. Right, okay, so what's the fucking point?
It basically just, if you say something like it is true that the cat is on the mat, the it is true is superfluous to the deflationary theory. If there's a cat on the mat, you say there's a cat on the mat. Yeah.
That was the redundancy one. Then there was the performance one, and then there was another one as well. So the performance one is talking about, certain actions people do. But anyway, let's have this chat off there. I mean, it's really interesting reading all this stuff, but some of it was just reading it going, is this relevant to what I want to discuss about truth? Like the epistemic theories of truth are very relevant to the discussion, whereas the ones that go, well, we're not really talking about truth. Is that really useful to a conversation about truth? It gives the other side of the coin, which is fair, but it might not be right. So, Azar, hi, nice to have you here. And LB, great. How are you doing? Glad to have you all here with us tonight. So if you've only just tuned in, we are doing a quick critique or review of the criticism of atheism and proving the validity of atheism, episode 2, How Did Atheism Begin? So, I best press play. And Dave, give us a shout anytime you want me to pause.
Assalamu alaikum. There is no starting point for atheism, and there was no atheism before the 18th century AD, with the exception of some of what...
Okay, so that's wrong.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the first point.
If what he's trying to say is, if he's trying to say that there was no organized atheism before the 18th century, he might be in the right ballpark, but it's still not true, because there were people writing about atheism in the 16th century, 17th century,
Yeah.
So, he's not off to a good start.
No, to start with something so unbelievably wrong. And
he says, sorry.
I was just going to say, we've done a few streams about, the origins and the etymology of atheism and things like that, and how it started with Atheist in 500 BC, and how it came over to English in the 16th century, and, how it has changed over time. So atheism, the concept has been around, it has changed, it has evolved, it has become more specific, and in recent years has become more vague and ambiguous as well in certain circles online and with political agendas in America. So starting off with something that is just seems just really wrong to me. Why would you start off with something like that?
Yeah, and like he mentions Diagoras here, he was writing about there being no gods. But there were other Greek philosophers at the time that wrote about there being no gods as well. And if you think of, say, other societies, there's been societies without gods going back then. Like if you think of, say, Buddhism as a religion, they weren't arguing against the existence of God, but they weren't really arguing for it either. They believe something very different. Yeah.
Buddhism is one of those interesting ones, which is it's very spiritual without the mysticism, though there are some elements of mysticism.
Elements,
yeah, it's just not exactly in the same ballpark as the others.
Yeah, so like I say, if he's just talking about atheism as in philosophers discussing it more intricately and to a larger extent, then I'd say more likely the 17th century rather than the 18th.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, atheism isn't, like you said earlier, it's a morphous thing that's changed over time, and how it's been perceived has changed over time. So it really depends on what he's talking about when he says atheism didn't exist.
So he's either being incredibly unclear, or he's just plain wrong, or maybe both. Oh, Dave, you've frozen.
I'm going to go with the latter.
Oh, you're back.
Yeah, both. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back. You're back.
Okay. Yeah, you're freezing on my end now.
Uh-oh. Maybe we need to switch.
Yeah, so
sorry, Dave. I think that's the lag there causing that one. I think maybe we, for future streams, we should try not using Discord, as you seem to be having issues, and we'll just see if it's an issue with your connection or not. But yes, should we carry on, or is there anything else you wanted to address at this point?
Yeah. No,
was attributed to Diagoras. Nations
we'll just declare both those answers.
Were believing in the Creator. Atheism is a trivial phenomenon in the history of mankind.
Okay, pause
Dr.
that.
Abdullah Shihri.
A trivial phenomenon.
Yeah.
Trivial.
And not just that, he said all nations were believing in the Creator. Well, no, they weren't. Especially not if he's talking about the monotheistic God, because not all nations believed in the monotheistic God. Definitely not all nations believed in the Abrahamic God.
No, monotheism's relatively new in comparison to other gods.
Yeah. So he's wrong again, and he's making kind of a faulty statement. Yes, there are plenty of societies that believed in a particular creator, but there are lots of different origin stories. Some believed in multiple creators. So
yeah, and some believe in. I mean, I'm calling back to when I was reading up on Norse mythology a long time ago. That there were two planes, opposing planes, the plane of fire and the plane of ice, and they collided to get together to create the universe as we know it, and from that came the gods. So the gods didn't come first in that creation story, and I know there are some other creation stories that don't have the same sort of thing with the creator god as well, or as you say, multiple creator god type things. So yeah, and atheism is a trivial thing. I mean, why do you think it's a trivial thing? What is the definition of something that is trivial, Dave?
It just makes no impact, at least in the sense that he's using it. It's something that's just like this little byproduct that happens every now and again. It makes no difference. It has no impact. It says nothing. It adds nothing to the conversation. But none of that's true about atheism.
No, I mean, if there is no God, surely that has a massive impact to the sorts of conversations and the way we think about the world.
Yeah.
You know, maybe being charitable if he's talking about the only a lack of belief sort of style, maybe there isn't much impact there. But I'd hope that he's not addressing that and he's actually addressing, philosophical atheism or atheism proper.
Yeah, I would think he was if he's talking about it beginning in the 18th century.
Yeah.
But again, it's, I mean, if you're going to define atheism as the belief there is no monotheistic God, then you could sort of count Buddhism in those lines. And I wouldn't say Buddhism was trivial.
No, definitely not. It's an entire way of life, impact. Isn't it?
Yeah. But, that's taking it to a kind of extreme. But there are people that have been persecuted through time for being atheist. So it's not trivial because people want to stamp it out. In highly religious cultures where it starts to appear, they attack it at saying it's more than just trivial.
Yeah. So we're disagreeing with you. We're less than 30 seconds into your video, and we've managed to pull you up on 3 points already.
Yeah.
Two of them within the same soundbite.
It's bad.
Dave, sorry, I forgot to ask beforehand, because I've got the video on both screens and I'm managing between. Can you keep your eye on the chat and let me know if there's any relevant comments that come in? Hopefully people are enjoying them. I did quickly flick back and saw Luke's comment. Atheism started when rocks began.
Yeah. And I mean, Roger makes a good point in one of his comments. He says, if atheism is trivial, why does he spend his time making content speaking against atheism? If it was trivial, it would make no difference. So
it's true. He's defeated himself by talking about it.
Yeah.
Well done, Roger. Round of applause. If I had my turntables and sound effects going, I'd press that button right there.
Press the button, yeah. Do you want to go back a couple of seconds?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, okay, from there, because I missed what he said after that.
Mankind. Dr. Abdullah Shehri says, atheism emerged just as a shark fin in the roaring sea of religion.
Okay, pause that. I mean, he is kind of right.
Oh, you've cut out again, Dave.
And
so you just cut out again.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you again. So atheism emerged just as a shark fin in the roaring sea of religion.
Yeah, and he is kind of right. I mean, atheism is a critique of religious beliefs in that, the religious party is making an argument that such and such a God exists, and the atheist is arguing against that such and such a God. So it has emerged from the roaring sea, the roaring sea of religion, because if there's no religious arguments, there would be no arguments against the religion. It kind of makes sense. But also, if it emerged as a shark fin, isn't that saying that it's predatory and more than just trivial?
Dave, yes. Yeah. So basically he's making these videos because he's scared, because it's sensible to be scared of sharks.
Yep. It does have that feeling, doesn't it? He's not the mayor in Jaws going, there's nothing to worry about. He's the guy on the beach going, shark!
One of those who crammed atheism in the European mind was Emil Durkheim. Durkheim attempted to explain why religion was praised and considered that religion has been created by society. Durkheim assumed that clans share a common symbol known as totem, which is often an animal, hence the origin of religion.
I mean, to an extent, this bit makes sense to me. What he's talking about, that guy was a sociologist, right?
Yeah.
So there were, I mean, in very early religions, the way religion and spiritualism came about was people assigning agency to things. So humans were prone to assigning agency because if there's a rustling in the bush, if you prepare or run away because you think it might be, as in prepare for a fight or run away because you might be a lion, there's more chance of you surviving than you going, it's nothing. And from that, paranoia and superstition starts being bred into our line, if you will. It's a behavior that works for our survival over not assigning agency. And over time, this sort of turned into superstitions. Oh, well, we didn't sing this song on that day and the rains didn't come, so maybe we need to do that next year. And then they do it next year and the rains come. And obviously this is just chance, but at that time we had no way of knowing these things. So we assume that, oh my God, there's something more, and eventually that thing became a god. And totems were representative of certain things within cultures that they respected. I can't remember any of them specifically. I think like the bear was one for strength and things like that, and the eagle watched over you. Or I can't remember them, but they assigned attributes to them, and they had rituals that they wanted the strength of the bear and so on and so forth.
Yeah, he's not done a very good job of explaining Durkheim's theory here, and in fact, he just glosses over it completely and says it's wrong. It makes some pretty bad arguments against it. Now, full disclosure here, I'd only looked into this for the first time this afternoon, so I'm no expert on it. But Durkheim, he created a sociological theory of why religions arise. And he did it through studying one of the Aboriginal tribes in Australia, and I can't remember the name of it now. But he basically took religion and he stripped it down to only the most vital parts that were common to all religions. Like he ignored God and he ignored the supernatural. And the reason he ignored the supernatural is because he believed that to ancient people, everything was supernatural. Natural is a sort of more modern term. And Durkheim basically says natural is a term that has arisen because of science and our ability to rationally study the natural world and distinguish, reality from, say, fantasy, whatever you want to call it. So because these supernatural ideas couldn't be explained naturally, like ghosts or what have you, that's how the category separation came about. But of course, they didn't have science way back then. So there was no distinction between the natural and the supernatural. So they wore one and the same thing for those people back then.
Yeah,
so
that makes sense, really, doesn't it? I mean, it's like I was saying with the superstition thing. They had no way of knowing the reasons that rain would fall at certain times and the seasons and things like that. So they would put it all down to the supernatural. Whereas now we can actually say, well, it's because of, the water cycle and so on and so forth.
Exactly. Okay, so Durkheim broke things down to religion having three elements. Oh God, what were they? One was the. Sorry, I'm very tired today.
It's okay. I think you actually wrote them in WhatsApp. I didn't actually fully read that message, but I can read it out now. So you're
okay. I'm remembering the sacred, the ritual, and the moral.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah. The sacred was the things that would kind of inspire awe and respect and things like that. So the natural world would inspire awe. Bears would cause, fear. The waterfall that they could get their drink from would inspire respect. So these things became kind of sacred to them. And they would invest this sort of sacredness into them. And in whichever clan, community, what have you, it would become a sort of shared consciousness that these areas were sacred. The second part is the ritual. And this would have to do with, say, every day they go down and they leave berries for the bear because he stops other things from coming into your area, and they mistake the bear as a guardian, say. And because it doesn't attack them, but it does attack things in the forest, and they think that the things in the forest, aren't coming because of the bear. Or the water gives them, it refreshes them, gives them energy, so they turn it into a ritual. Everybody goes down and, say, prays or perform some act before taking the water because they think it purifies the water spiritually or what have you. And these rites come about because of the sacred. The other thing that religion offers is a moral community, morals from whichever religion.
Dave, sorry, can you say that again?
Ooh. The morals?
Yeah.
Yeah? Yeah. The other thing it offers is like a moral community. So everybody gets together. And in this case, if we imagine the totem is the place where everybody goes to share stories and they pass on messages and they learn how to behave. And the totem is also sacred because into it is carved the history of whichever tribe it is. And whichever rites are performed, how the rites came about. And that's why these totems became sacred, because they were historiographs of whichever community or tribe. And that's how he kind of signified religion. Another one of the reasons that he took out the supernatural is because not all religions have the supernatural or worship a god. If you think of, again, Buddhism, they have the 3 or 5 noble truths.
Can't remember.
And that's, yeah, I can't. But that's what the people worship, these noble truths, not some god or some deity or what have you. So even in religions without God, there are certain sacred parts of that religion that get worshipped, that get spread about the community, and these sacred things give rise to morals and rights. That's how he saw religion. And none of that is kind of explained by this guy. No, he just sees it as the worshipping of a totem. But it's not just the worshipping of a totem, it's all the stuff that goes into creating the sacredness of the totem.
No, and that makes a lot of sense, actually, if you do think about pretty much all religions. I mean, even some of the modern atheistic religions, like things like the Satanic Temple and Church of Satan, they still have the moral aspect, and they still have sort of rituals. Maybe not so much on the sacred side, though. But this is a modern take on religion. But they still probably hit 2 out of the 3, and everything up until that point probably had at least all 3.
Yeah. I would say the Satanic Temple still kind of has rights because you still go to the temple. You may not be doing them in kind of the same way.
Oh no, it has
But doesn't
it
the
has the
Satanic...
ritual things, but what I was saying,
Oh,
it
and the
doesn't.
sacredness.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because if you think upon it as something like the ideas taught by the church are considered to be sacred, like the be truthful, be powerful, be aggressive, not aggressive, but assertive. These are all things that are in the church that if you go against, you could be considered as going against not the church, but the ideas of the church. So there is still, it's not the same kind of sacred as a religion might have, but there's still a kind of sacredness to them.
Yeah, no, that does make sense. It's a bit more of a tenuous definition.
Yeah.
But it's there. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. And the funny thing is there's a philosopher in 420 BC called Prodicus. We don't have a lot of his work left, just fragments, but he was known for talking about how the Greek religions that he existed around him came about because of social influences. Like he saw, is it Bacchus that's the god of wine? Dionysus. He saw that in areas where wine was especially common and came about, that they worshipped wine gods. Areas where fruit was such and such, or say the Spartans, they would worship warlike gods. So it would be the things that they saw the most that were influencing the religions and the gods that they believed in.
Yeah, that's a pretty keen insight into
especially back then.
Yeah. Yeah, hard to travel and see as much stuff to get such an insight. So, I mean, fair play to
he
him.
was only basing it on his travels within the kind of Greece, but still, that's pretty snappy.
Yeah. And it makes sense. I mean, but then that also makes sense about what I was saying about how superstition came about. People who needed the rains for their crops and things like that, and they started doing particular dances, and then it became, the rain dance, the rain gods, and so on and so forth. And so I mean that all ties in like really well.
And you can see the same sort of thing happening in, say, Aztec culture. If you think about the virgins being thrown into volcanoes thousands of years ago. Oh, we didn't throw somebody into the volcano last week and the volcano went off. What if we start giving them, sacrificing people to them? Maybe it'll keep them happy. And the volcanoes don't go off. And then eventually one does go off and it's like, oh, well, maybe it's the type of people we're throwing in. So we change that. So yeah, you can see it. And one of the things that Durkheim says is religions like the totems tend to have the history, and that's why they're revered as sacred. Now, you think about something like the Bible. It contains the history of the Jewish people, and it contains the moral community because it's guides about how we ought to live. It contains the rites, how to build, the big tent. Can't remember what it's called now. But it contains all these guides about how to live. And the Christian Bible kind of does the same thing. When you look at religions, they all contain some element of history that they thought was worth recording, and the rites and the rituals and all that kind of thing. So even when you expand it beyond the totem, you see it in the written religions.
Yeah, very interesting. And so basically, I mean, from that conversation, there's a lot of content, and what you're saying is that this guy sort of skims over that content and misses out on a hell of a lot of it.
Yeah, he doesn't explain the reasoning behind it, and the reasoning behind it is important. not only because it's part of the argument, but if he's not giving this information to the people he's writing these videos for, how do they know he's attacking the actual argument? Do they care that he's attacking the actual argument, or is it enough to just say, well, it's wrong? You're part of my religion, so you see what I mean. You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah. It's almost, I suppose, not necessarily a direct one, but it's almost a form of straw man argument. He's not presenting the actual argument and saying it's wrong. He's going, well, here's this little snippet, and it's wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
It's straw man by omission. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I don't know if that is such a thing, but it is what it is. So let's click play and see how he presents this.
It's all known today that Durkheim's assumptions were absolutely absurd because there are whole nations and entire civilizations that know nothing about totem, but they clearly believe in the Almighty God.
Really?
Yeah, that's his whole argument against it, pretty much.
I mean, the belief in the Almighty God, especially his version of the Almighty God, has been around for, well, less than 2,000 years. If Islam has been around for 1,400 years? Yeah, Christianity obviously around 2,000. If we're talking about the Abrahamic deity, what is it 6,000 years?
Yeah,
roughly?
It's about 6,000, I think.
Yeah, and obviously there's other religions before that. They were polytheistic in general. So not one of them would have had a belief in any version of his Almighty God. So
animistic religions.
The sun was God?
Sun worshippers. If you think about Buddhists again, they didn't believe in an almighty God. But the thing is he's taking Durkheim literally. Religion started with the worship of totems. That's not what he's saying, though. When you look at the actual arguments and you understand the actual arguments, he's not just arguing that they started with totems, but that the totems were representative of how religions come about sociologically. And Sorry. I was just going to say there are criticisms that can be leveled at Durkheim, in that he only based his theory on one tribe and one religion. So he expanded a lot on very little data. And you could sort of say the same for Prodicus. You know, he'd only traveled a small part, so... But when you actually translate the arguments to other things, you can actually sort of see similarities in the rise of those religions.
Especially with what we know about it today. I mean, yes, you're right. They had a small data set. We'd say that was probably bad science, although it wasn't exactly science, so that doesn't matter. But we would say that it isn't a good enough data set. But as you say, we can take what we've learned from both of them and actually apply it back and have a look at other religions, look at other things we know about the past. And yeah, you know, it does kind of work in most cases. So there is, and if you're going to go like 80-20 with it, at least 80% of the time, these arguments are bang on. And the other 20% of the time, they're pretty close to being there as well.
Yeah. And the actual elements that go into creating the religion probably hold for a lot of them. And of course, you could argue here that as well that Durkheim ignored how religions traveled and how they, you know, other areas brought religions to other places, and that changed the shape of things in that culture for that religion. But Durkheim was specifically speaking about the origins and how they came about originally.
I sort of would like to know what his reasoning for assuming that everybody knew about the Almighty God is as well. Because other than it being demonstrably false, the only thing I can think of is I don't know if there's a similar quote in the Quran, but like in the Bible where there's the, everybody knows God. I can't remember the specific quote in the Bible either, but there is this claim in there that absolutely everybody knows.
It's written
God
in our heart.
And yeah, morals are written on our heart. God existing is blah blah, whatever it is. I can't remember. And I assume because the Quran is basically the Bible 2.0, there is something along those lines.
Yeah.
It has recently been shown that the idea of totem in ancient tribes was economic, not religious.
This is him being literal again, the selling of totems, rather than actually thinking about what they represent and what the arguments were supposed to represent as well.
Well, that's the thing. Each totem sort of represented the history and kind of ideas of the tribe and what they saw as helpful and the greatest things. So it would show the kind of food that they ate, the kind of animals they trapped. And other tribes might see that totem and think, well, I can trade with those people because look at what they've got, look what I've got. But it wouldn't have been economic in the very, very old days because what economy was there?
This is true.
Totem is a national emblem and a symbol that defines the tribes.
To an extent, that's true. As what we've discussed as well. There's not anything wrong with that. It's just not the complete picture.
Yeah.
Something similar to the flag nowadays. The idea that religion was created by society is absurd.
That's only because you're approaching it from a particular angle. The angle being that your religion is the one true religion, and therefore anything that goes against that is absurd to you. Okay, think about the religions that are not your religion. How are they created? They weren't created by your religion, and they've been around for much longer than your religion has, and they didn't believe in your God, and there's polytheistic, animistic, sun worshippers, and all sorts. If they were not created by the society and superstitions within that society, how were all these different religions created?
And like Prodicus argues...
As it's well known...
Oh, sorry, I minimized it by mistake.
Sorry, yeah, and like Prodicus argues, when you look at these cultures, and he was around at the time when these things were sort of springing up, he could see how they were coming about as social constructs. So he's arguing from this place, well, no, only God can give us religion. Well, here's people that existed at the time seeing it happening and recording it because they were interested in explaining things. So that's how they looked at the world, as a means of trying to explain how these things were arising and what the truth of them was and that kind of thing.
Another example that we could lean on here, again, I mentioned things like atheistic or non-theistic religions, like the Church of Satan and the Satanic Temple. They've come out from a cultural need from non-theists to still have some form of religion to cling to because, we are social creatures, and many atheists do, or non-theists do, feel that the lack of connection that they got from religion and having certain ways to live their life, certain things that they might not have to think about so much, and the community of like-minded people is very beneficial to them. So, okay, you could say that, part of it is because it's a response to things like Christianity, but it is because of society responding to a need and building said religions.
And another thing about the argument about how religions aren't socially constructed, you just have to look at Scientology. You can literally see that being created and coming about as a response to society, as a need for community
Oh, sorry. As you cut out a second there, Dave.
The need for its leader to get rich.
Sorry.
I mean, what was one of the things with the leader having a need to get rich? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're back in the room. You can literally see Scientology coming about naturally.
Coming about, yeah. You can see the creation of its origin story. One of the things that L. Ron Hubbard said was that if he wasn't a sci-fi writer, he would have created a religion. It creates connections, community. They have sacred rites. And none of this could have come from a god. I mean, I suppose one could argue here that maybe it came from Satan, but it seems unlikely because you can actually see L. Ron Hubbard create it and build it up.
Unless you're going to argue that L. Ron Hubbard is actually God in human form, and that's the one true religion.
Yeah, if you've ever read any of his work, you would know that wasn't true. And Bearded Heretics, Luke says, you can see the same thing happen with Mormonism.
Yeah.
The religion is originally an individual phenomenon, a relationship between human and his God.
Yeah, it's not individual. Because it comes from a community, and the community all contributes to the religion. The community kind of contributes to ideas. If you think about the Church of England in the 80s, it had a very anti-gay stance. As homosexuality was increasingly accepted in Britain, the church started accepting it. We now see the church having female pastors, which again would have been unheard of in the like mid 1900s.
Yeah, especially because of Timothy. What was it? Timothy 2 something, or where a woman can't teach man. I used to know my Bible verses quite well. I don't anymore. But then we don't really do much on religion anymore. Yeah. It's not our thing. So I'm sorry. We should have had someone on that knows them all by heart still. Kristen would have probably been a good one. I'm sure she's still got them in there somewhere.
They're not that important to the ideas being talked about, though.
No.
And he isn't wrong when he says here religion is an individual relationship between the human and his God. That might be the case for the individual in certain circumstances, but they have got that from a community of believers. They have got that from their upbringing. They have got that from all different places. So it doesn't start with the individual. It starts with the community. And the community is what started the religion too.
Yeah, I think, it's hard to say for definite, but if we got rid of every single religious work, every single religious book, and film and everything, and wiped everybody's minds completely, I think religion would rise again, because there's still this need within humans to explain things and have community. But I don't think we'd have the same religions that we have today.
Well, here's one thing too that's probably worthy of note. I know a lot of atheists give the ancient Greeks a lot of credit for atheism and whatnot. But a lot of the people that most modern atheists considered atheist at the time actually believed in a single monotheistic type creator.
The prime mover.
And basically. And they came about through rational reasoning. I know a lot of atheists would say, well, it's not rational if it came to the conclusion of blah, 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 blah. But they used reasoning to get to that. They used, like arguments similar to the contingency argument or the argument for motion. So it wouldn't be uncommon to see those religions, maybe not the religions, but the ideas rise again. And it wouldn't be uncommon to see similar ideas arise in cultures that were very different in very different areas because they are using particular reasoning to get to these ideas. But the religions that come from it might not necessarily be the same.
Moreover, how can society create religion?
I think we just explained that, didn't we?
Yeah, pretty much.
Has anyone heard of a religion that emerges and then directly accepted by society? The opposite.
Not directly, not straight away. No, it's a slow process over, many, many years. New religions, as is about to say, the opposite is the case. Someone comes up with a new thing, especially into today's world. We tend to go, well, that's crazy. But hey, you brought up a good one, Dave. Scientology.
Yeah, and the other thing as well here, sorry.
Case.
The other thing here is he's arguing for Islam. Now, what he's forgotten is that there was a bunch of religions that existed in the Arabian Peninsula and in like Mecca and Medina before the rise of Islam. I mean, Judaism was there. There was Christianity there. There was in Arab.
Sorry, you cut out there. You mentioned two religions before you cut out. You said there was Christianity and Judaism there.
Yeah, and there was also the pagan Arabs worshipping gods in the Kaaba, long before Islam took it over. So he would have seen that even Islam wasn't an immediate acceptance. If you looked at the history, there are no religions that get immediate acceptance, even if they're proclaimed to be from God. They arise. Yeah, they arise slowly. But what he's forgetting is that in the far distant past, there wasn't hubs of society. There was tribes. And those things would probably proliferate quite quickly. And if there was a head of the clan, the ideas would come down from the head of the clan. So, yeah, I mean, he's ignoring huge parts in order to make bad arguments against criticisms of religion.
Yeah, and the other way religion can obviously overtake a society is by the sword. I mean, look at the Crusades.
Of course, yeah. And I mean, Islam, I know lots of people like to say that Islam didn't spread by the sword, but if you study the history, there was a lot of invasion going on then from Muslims, So, yeah, even a religion from God isn't just accepted.
The only way it would actually be just accepted is if God somehow spoke to everybody all at the same time in a way that convinced absolutely everybody that this is definitely the religion to follow, which, well, the fact that we
seems like
it's never happened, yeah.
Yeah, it seems like it's not going to happen ever either.
The usual attitude of society is opposing this religion. In effect, this absurd assumption of Durkheim doesn't answer the question, where did the idea of the Almighty God, the creator of heavens and earth, come? How did...
Well, from what we know, ancient Greece.
I mean, it probably existed in other cultures as well, before the Greeks invaded them at the time. But yeah, the idea came from thinking about how the universe might have come about. We still see many of the same arguments being used to argue for that God. So he's just being very sloppy. He's ignoring all the actual detail of the arguments that are being made by Durkheim or by other people that criticize religion like this in order to make straw man arguments, really.
The call for this idea arise throughout history by all prophets. By the way, Durkheim has a great role in distorting the knowledge of Europeans when he was presenting the parties of primitive tribes which contain orgies and prohibited acts as a religious practice. It has been proven that these parts were a rebellion against the structure of the social and religious life.
I didn't read any of that from Durkheim, so I don't know if he's
I can't quote on that for definite about that particular one, but there are certain religions that do have things like orgies,
fertility rights.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not. I cannot say specifically, as you say, about what he's talking about here, but there are religions that do have these certain rituals. So.
And another thing you said was that religions come about because of prophets presenting information from God. Well, there he's only describing one particular set of religions, as far as we know. The Greeks had oracles, but they weren't the same things as prophets. And they were more like fortune tellers.
And they weren't talking about his God either.
No, they weren't.
So...
yeah, and I mean, you think about something like Buddhism again, there are no prophets. You know, it all comes from the teaching of one man who went out and studied his society and saw the suffering and, you know, wrote about that suffering and about how life is suffering. The Aztecs didn't have prophets. The Native Americans didn't have prophets. I'm not sure that small tribes in Africa would have prophets. The Quran argues that Allah sends prophets to individual places to spread his message, but then he's not doing a particularly good job because a lot of these people he sent as prophets brought very different messages.
Yeah, and in fact, the only correct message came out of one location.
Yeah, exactly. And which all influenced each other in the way that everything arose, yeah.
Of the tribe, which is contrary to his claims. This is one of the most popular falsifications of Durkheim. Tribal systems in all societies were based on complete separation between both sexes.
No?
No. I mean, there were some, you know, but that's not true of all tribal societies. It's not true of all past societies. Women might have been treated as lesser, but not necessarily separated.
In some, they were treated as more as well. In some of the pagan religions, they were revered as the high priestesses. They're the ones that basically ran the religion, and the men were the ones that went out and fought, whilst, you know, the women were the revered and respected, and
they were the life bringers.
Exactly. And you look at a lot of the Viking tribes as well. I mean, there wasn't complete equality there, but it was far more equal than some of the more patriarchal societies that have been influenced by the Abrahamic religions. So again, there wasn't this complete separation between both sexes that he's talking about. Again, he seems to be only considering his experience, his particular tribe, and projecting that onto everyone else. Because it's like this for me, this is what it must be for everyone else, which I don't think's a particularly good way of looking at things.
I don't. It's almost like he's doing the same thing that he's criticizing Durkheim for taking a very limited data set and applying it to everything.
Yeah. the difference is oh, sorry, go for it.
Sorry. Oh no! You said what you were going to say. It's just before we carry on. There's some interesting comments coming from the chat.
I was just going to say, it's at least with Durkheim, we can apply what he's saying to, you know, like we've already said, to other things within society and say, oh, actually, yeah, you know what, this is how it does tend to work in various tribes. Whereas what we can say to him is he's saying, no, it's all this way, and we go, well, no, no, it's not.
Yeah, it's like, give me the argument that shows what you're saying is true. I mean, I'll go out and I'll look at tribal societies, but from what I've studied, it's a mix of all different kinds of things that came about in those various societies. Luke has posted a comment that said, the other thing he does here is specify monotheism. Monotheism hasn't been around for long at all, only since around 900 BCE. Monotheism like 3000 BC, which is what we mentioned with, you know, the Abrahamic. Monotheism hasn't been around for long at all. Sorry, monotheism since like 3000 BCE, but the more modern Abrahamic one since around 900 BCE. And Roger makes a good comment here. God had to wait until Arabic was created before revealing his perfect word, apparently.
I'm pressing the button again, Roger. And then make it so perfect that only a small tribe of people can understand it if they speak the language as a first language and no one else gets it, because that's apparently what perfection is.
And even then, a lot of them interpret it very differently.
Because something perfect can be so completely open to interpretation that, it can be so many different things.
As I argued.
You did. If you're interested, Dave's got a great article on this very thing of is the Quran perfect? It's on answersinreason.com. That's answers-in-reason.com, but just answersinreason.com will get you there anyway. If you type it into Google, answersinreason.com, is the Quran perfect? It'll take you right there.
And I think we did a stream on it too.
We did actually, yeah. There is a video stream, and I think we also cut out in our highlights just the article reading. Although don't quote me on that. I don't know if I started doing highlights back then or not. Right. Are there any more comments that you wanted to address, Dave, or shall we continue?
Nope, that was it.
By the beginning of the 21st century, atheism has emerged in a completely new outfit. It has falsely been coated with science and called scientific atheism. It introduced itself.
I'm not sure I've heard it called scientific atheism, but he's right that the New atheism does have a lot of scientific arguments. Now, by new atheism, we're not using it in the derogatory way that you can see when we talk about certain behaviors of new atheists. New atheism is the new wave of atheism that inspired by the four horsemen, rational thinking, science, and things like that, but has unfortunately gone awry and led to things like scientism and illogical thought as well. But I haven't heard it called scientific atheism before, but that might be one for me to go away and research if that is also another term for it.
Yeah, I think I've seen it called that in a couple of places, but nothing actual concrete as like a term.
Yeah.
With new assumptions. In the upcoming episodes, inshallah, we will discuss and refute the most famous of these assumptions. Wassalamu alaikum.
سبحانك ربي سبحانك.
Let me.
Unfortunately, that part's not up yet.
Oh, that's a shame. I'd have liked to have done that. But let me quickly switch the cam off. And we're back in the room after a brief technical hitch. I I quit Discord by mistake. I do apologise for that, folks. So yeah, Luke, yeah, not another type of atheism. Yeah, what have we got these days? I mean, we got the atheism, philosophical atheism, new atheism, lacktheism, rocktheism, scientific atheism.
Atheism, the one true atheism.
But yes, so I mean, there was an interesting video, and how long did we take doing it? Hey, Roger, I told you it would take us about an hour to go away through 3 minutes. The thing is, I mean, with stuff like this, especially when people do a concise video like that, and I get why you want to do that, because a small video like that, you can get a lot of hard-hitting messages out. But he gave a lot of false information, glossed over a lot of the information that he should have really spoken about. So I feel that the guy is trying to present something. I don't think he's necessarily doing anything intentionally dishonest. You know, I think there's falsehoods coming through there. There's definite falsehoods, but I don't think that from the way he was presenting himself, I mean, I don't know either way, but he seemed quite genuine with what he was saying. He just seemed very misinformed. But you tend to find that with people who've had quite an insular view on things, that, you know, they only look at themselves. I mean, it's what we all do, to be fair. We all look at our tribe or how things affect us. Well, it doesn't affect me, so why would it affect you? And unfortunately, that's what he was doing with every objection he had to, like, Durkheim. Well, that's not how it is in our society, and our society is representative of all societies. Well, Durkheim is presenting you something different. Okay, maybe Durkheim couldn't, with his limited data set, that this is how it happens in all cases, but we can use his arguments and have a look at society and go, well, actually, in a number of different societies, this is how it actually seems to work. So this, you know, especially talking about the three things, the sacred places, rituals, and morals. Actually, these three components are really big within all religions. Like Dave even said earlier when we started talking about how some of the modern atheistic religions, there is a form of sacredness in certain things. So from that regard, he's only focused on the totem as the literal totem and not everything about totems and their history and what they represent, and saw them purely as an economic function at a time when the economy wasn't necessarily really a big deal. It was, you know, can we, you'd be trading your goods. We need some extra arrows, we've got some ducks, and whatever. We need grain, we need to plant our fields. It wasn't the economy that we're thinking of today. It was a very different time. So, yeah. It was, his takes on things were pretty poor, but I don't think that he was lying. I think he was trying to be genuine. I think he was trying to be honest.
I do.
And I want to listen to more of his videos, and maybe address some more of them. And hopefully he can actually listen to some of ours as well, and maybe take something about it. And if you'd like to have a chat with us in the future about some of the things he said, that's great. I mean, after I've finished this and it's finished processing, I'll send a link on the bottom of his and say, hey, we've reviewed your video. Come let us know what you think.
Well, Roger says part 3 is up. I don't know how I missed it, but yeah, it is. Roger says, he goes on to say, atheism is worshipping nature as a kind of idolatry.
That's closer to more Gaia, if you're talking about worshipping nature and the life force and things like that. Atheism isn't worshipping nature at all. No.
We've just had a comment come through from Facebook as well by Bill Oni. So hello, Bill. I've not seen your name before.
Oh, neither have I. Hello, Bill. And nice to have you here. And actually, it's great that the restream bot's suddenly working from Facebook. It's still not telling us that anybody is watching on Facebook, unfortunately, but hello. I would argue for a good portion of atheists, it's simply not believing in God. To view it like an organized religion is a mistake. Yeah, I mean, regardless of how you view atheism, whether you take, as atheists ourselves, we view atheism as the proposition gods don't exist, with the atheist believing that this proposition is true. But we understand that it's quite common, especially on the internet, for any form of non-theist to be regarded as an atheist. So by non-theist, one that doesn't believe in gods. So as you say, a good portion of atheists, it's simply not believing in a god. And you're right, that is all it is for a lot of people. And I can understand why that there are some atheistic religions, because like I mentioned in the video earlier, there are a lot of people who feel the need for community. I mean, we are a social species. We like community. Not all of us, obviously, but we want to be around people. We want to be around like-minded people. We want support. We want focus. We want ways to live our lives because we're having trouble, and we want a path to follow. So yeah, it definitely makes sense that there are going to be some of us that are like that. So yes, yeah, I agree with you. It's a mistake to view it in that way, Bill, and thank you for the comment. Luke, make sure you let him know, otherwise someone else might do it for you. I will do it, but when I forget, please remind me.
He might not actually complain about this one because we're criticizing a religious person.
That's true. But he will probably complain that we've sort of alluded to what he might be saying.
Yeah. But we get a hate boner watch anyway, so.
Awesome. That was interesting, though, Dave. I think I'd like to have a read up myself on the Durkheim stuff when I've got a chance. It sounds like it's very interesting. And who was the Greek philosopher as well that you mentioned?
Prodicus.
It sounds again like it'd be interesting, and also if there's any modern iterations of either of their work, because I mean we spoke about how we can see things happening, and when we look about evolution and evolutionary survival traits, assigning agency, but taking the sociologist route or anthropologist route on it as well would be very interesting, and maybe Luke can throw in a little bit of psychology for us on the topic in a future sci-fi as well. Are there any more questions or anything like that though, guys? Because if not, we might call it an early night, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes it's nice to do a bit of a shorter stream. I know sometimes people get annoyed with how long our streams can be. So there you go. It's one for the people that like a shorter stream.
And also my usual book recommendation is about to happen.
Oh, actually, on that, Dave, you need to go back and put links to them in the messages.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I do keep meaning to do it, but I had a lot on the last week.
Oh, yeah, don't worry. I keep forgetting to do everything I'm supposed to as well.
Nah. I have to say, I am fully vaccinated, though.
Yeah, you've now got 6G.
Yeah, and 4 arms, apparently.
I get mine at the end of next month.
Nice one. And yeah, I didn't have to book it. We're much better in Wales than you are in England, because I actually just got the letter through that said your appointment is on such and such a day. Yeah,
fair. Well, there aren't really many people in Wales, are there? So I guess it's easier for them.
True. I'll have you know there's at least 3,000 people in this county. Okay, so book recommendations.
The Psychology of Religion by Robert H. something. Robert H. Thewlis. Is that Thewlis? Thowlis?
I'll go with Thowlis because it's about religion, so it sort of fits. But I think it is Thewlis.
And The Philosophy of Religion, A Critical Introduction by Beverly Clack and Brian R. Clack.
Both excellent books if you want to look into sort of, one is about popular religious arguments and their counters, and what the philosophy of religion is about, and that kind of thing. And the other one is about, reasons people might have for believing and the different types of belief and that kind of thing.
They both sound very interesting. And hopefully we will remember to put the links into the chat and also onto our webpage as well once I put up the podcast. So if you were not aware, I've started putting up our current streams as podcasts. I'm doing a small backlog of what people have told us their favourite episodes of ours are. They're going out on Sundays, and I'm releasing 3 episodes a week until I'm caught up with current episodes, and then I'll be releasing 2 a week in time roughly with this. The episodes are not heavily as the audio podcasts are not as heavily produced as the Fresh Air podcast was and will be again when we get back to recording it, because obviously this is a live video stream. But for anyone that does actually prefer listening or wants to be out and about and have it in their pocket, you can load up Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or any of those and just listen in. So there you go, folks. We finally got around to putting the SciPhi show as a podcast stream as well. We've also got some new articles coming up soon, and there's been a few that we've put up recently. I've done one on Hitchens and anti-theism. I don't know if we're going to cover that off as a video, but we might if we are stretched for time and there's a cancellation. It'll give us something to actually discuss like we did today. Hopefully, though, we can cover off this guy's next video, maybe next week, or no, the week after next. Next week on Tuesday, we're going to cover off hammering rationality, which we couldn't do on Tuesday due to technical difficulties. And Thursday, we'll be covering off ethics and AI, so how ethics is involved within artificial intelligence. And that was obviously supposed to be tonight's stream, but due to Henry unfortunately being ill, we had to skip it, and hopefully he'll be better for next Thursday. However, if he's not, we'll cover off part 3 of this. Failing that, we'll do it the following Tuesday. Is there anything else anyone would like to discuss at this stage, or shall we move on to the end?
Also, about next week's streams, I'm going to throw in a bonus AMA at the end of Tuesdays.
Ooh.
It's my birthday, so.
Oh, well, I mean, did you want to not do it on Tuesday? We could always do a stream.
No, it'll be good. But like I say, I'll do a quick half-hour AMA at the end if anyone wants one.
Awesome. All right, we might be streaming. I tell you what, I'll make sure I get some beers in as well. Actually, technically, it would be the end of the month stream next Tuesday, wouldn't it, as well? It would usually be our end-of-month AMA. So we haven't done one because of me moving and stuff like that. But yeah, so it's your birthday, the end of month, and we've got hammering rationality to cover off next Tuesday. Blimey, next Tuesday's going to be a blinder. I might have to book Wednesday off work. Awesome. Okay, well, thank you everybody who has tuned in today. Again, I am sorry about Tuesday's stream and tonight's stream not being the stream that you were probably expecting, but they will be on next week. Thank you, obviously, everyone who is catching the rerun, listening to the podcast, and likes and shares all of our content and spreads the good word. So thank you very much. You've been watching the Fresh Air SciPhi stream. We have been covering off a criticism of atheism and proving the validity of Islam, episode 2, about atheism's origins. So good night all. I'm Joe.
I'm Prodicus.
And I'll see you all next Tuesday.
Good night all. Good night, Chris, Luke, and Leon and Roger.
And Bill. And
Bill.
LB and OP and
And LP.
Peace and Wealth Seeker and everyone else who actually tuned in but didn't say hello into the chat. Oh, Nazar, hey, how you doing? Sorry about that. I missed you earlier. Good
Yeah, I
night.
missed a few people as well. Good night.